All right, now that you've got the data into a Python data frame, there are some things we might want to evaluate with the data. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to talk about querying data frames. Okay. So now that you got your data in, there are things we might want to evaluate with the data. For example, what if we have two identical observations in our data? We might want to eliminate duplicates. And evaluate or work with certain items. When we created these Bibitor data sets, so this will give you a little bit more insight on how they do this. When we created the Bibitor data sets, we pull ending inventory from an actual organization. Right? For illustration purposes, this script that we're going to use today, this querying data frame script, is going to pull the April 2021 data that we accumulated. So for illustration only, this script that we're writing today pulls the April 2021 data we accumulated. The data frame has more than 8.5 million records. However, we just want to get a product listing. That's all we want. It's got, remember, this is every single day we get their ending inventory. Well, I just want to know what the product listing is. Okay, so Bibitor has over 75 locations. And each location sells the same products. Those same products exist each day in ending inventory. So all we want to do is we want to get rid of all of the duplicates. Because I'm interested in the product listing. Okay, so what's the logic? Right? The question is, what is the product? What is Bibitor's product listing? Right? And if this is the only data that I had, then I would have to use some kind of logic just to scrape out of this big data set the information that I want to answer the question. What is their product listing? So I use this listing to calculate, and this is when we're creating the Bibitor, the estimated purchase prices for our overall data set. The different locations may sell the same product at different prices. Or there may be discounts given throughout the year. So when I'm doing this, I always want the highest sales price. So again, I want the product listing, but I also want to get the products. I want to know what the product is and what was the maximum price that was charged to consumers, whether they be businesses or walking off the street consumers. I want to know what's the highest sale price possible. So when we try to come up with the purchase prices, I use this highest sales price to calculate the markup on the product. And establish a purchase price from the vendor or importer. Okay, so again, I'm just trying to set up the question, give you a little background of why this data set is the way it is, and then start thinking through the logic. So the first thing I want to be thinking about in creating the logic is, first, I want to read in the data. Okay? And here we're just using the month of April. We usually use 3 months to create the product listing during that 3-month period. So I'm going to read in the data, and here we're just using April. Okay, but the logic is the same whether I'm using 1 month, 3 months, a year. The code that I wrote, and I use R, reads in the entire 12 months. Here we're just going to do 1 month, right? So I'm reading all 12 months. So that's the first thing I would do, read in the data. Second, I want to sort the data. And I want to sort it in 2 different ways. One, I'm going to sort it by brand, and then within brand, by sales price. I want brand in ascending order, and sales price is in descending order. All right, so that will tell me, give me all the brands, and then have sales price in descending order by every time the brand shows up. Then I'll have the very first instance of that brand will be the highest sales price. Okay, so that's my first step. Second step, I'm just outlining the logic, right? The second, the third, and last step, I want to drop the duplicates that exist, keeping the first observation which, if my logic is sound, is the highest sales price. Okay? Highest sales price observation. Okay, so this is kind of my logic. This is kind of the question that we're running here. This is kind of the logic that I've put together here. This is the 3 steps that I'm going to use to be able to start answering my questions. So give me a product listing with the maximum sales price. And so now the next thing, right, after we get through defining the question and then start thinking about the logic, we got to go back a little bit, one step, and see if we have the data that's available to do this. And we do, because we're trying to get rid of whatever the data is. We likely have brand, we likely have sales price, but I'd want to go through and take a look at the data definition. So this is the setup of the question. The next video will go through the execution in Python.